everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, earlier today, we were going to do a show in the afternoon like we normally do, and thought, no, the schedules weren't going to work, so we'll do it in the evening, and that's fine. Sometimes we do shows in the evening instead. That's okay. At the time I suggested that, Tony, I did not think about the fact that there was also going to be a New York Mets playoff game going on right at this very moment. So this should be mostly a normal show, and hopefully the viewers listening on a podcast later would have no idea that there's a small possibility I will have some kind of a nervous breakdown in the show. We'll see how it all goes.
Well, I think just be glad that Javier Baez is nowhere near the Mets any longer, and you have an opportunity to, watch players hit the ball. I feel terrible for the Tigers. Does he even play for the Tigers anymore? Does he even?
He's hurt. He's injured, and it was essentially the day after he got injured and went on the DL for the season that they went on this incredible tear, which is probably a coincidence, but maybe not.
Maybe. Fort Wayne Buckeye saying, "Let's go Mets." Tom, I'm shocked that you found that one right away.
Strong agree. So
one day we can just do a show about our memories of the 1986 Mets, my adopted team back then, but not today. That will have to wait. Gary Carter and Rafael Santana and Keith Hernandez and Kevin Mitchell and Tim Tuffle, but not today, Tom. Not today. Today
I can do that longer than you can, I promise.
But we are here to take all of your questions, recap what we heard from Ryan Day and Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles. I will say, Tom, this seemed like a more upbeat group of coaches than we got last week. Last week, Ryan Day was pretty gruff. Jim Knowles was pretty short. But I think everybody's in a much better mood today after getting through the Big Ten opener. But I can understand Jim Knowles being okay right now because he's facing Iowa's offense. Chip Kelly and Ryan Day being so chipper when they've got to deal with the Iowa defense was a little bit of a surprise.
A little bit of a surprise. I think they feel like they're in an okay place right now. And the thing is, you ask, are you satisfied with everything? And no one's ever satisfied with anything. Jim Knowles he was asked, what would it take for you to be satisfied or to, walk away like happy from a game? And he said, if the defense gets a shutout, holds the opposing offense under 100 yards of offense, and creates 4 turnovers and scores 2 touchdowns, which is like, oh, is that all you would need to do to feel happy? I'm sure that is, a great thing from a mental health perspective, that's what it would take for you to feel like, oh, I've done a good job. I'm satisfied with this. Good.
I know, but if that performance happened, I can tell you one of the very first questions in the post game, say Jordan Hancock intercepts a pass and also drops an interception. The first question is, Jordan, what happened on the drop? I know because I've asked that question. You're always like, we're always looking for the flaws and the faults. It's like, yeah, you're allowing 6.7 points per game. Why not 6.6? Really, that's the question that I'm trying to figure out here. And so there are always mistakes to be made, mistakes to be pointed out. As we all know, we live on the internet, and that's what we do here. But overall, defensively, I'm not expecting a step back this week. I do think it's going to be fascinating to see how they handle Caleb Johnson, because just watching a YouTube of just the offensive plays against Iowa State that was posted on our board, the Buckeye Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus today, watching him, because I've not gotten to watch Iowa too much this year. Why would we? Why would anybody? But watching Caleb Johnson, like, that dude has rushed for 119 yards in the first game and then just keeps amping it up, 100 yards in each game. He is a tough runner. He's explosive. He had, I think, 4 rushes over 25 yards against Iowa State, but also maybe tends to wear down as there's so much put on his shoulders. And we know they had a 10 or 13 point lead against Iowa State and ended up losing that game. But they need to tackle this guy. And tackling for the linebackers has been an issue. Tackling for Caleb Downs and Lathan Ransom has not been as much of an issue. And I think having those two guys as a security blanket is really going to limit what Iowa can do downfield in the running game, if you will.
Well, there's times when having your safeties be your leading tacklers is a bad sign. That can be, yeah, they're getting the guys on the ground. There are 20 yards between the line of scrimmage and where they're getting the guys on the ground. That's there can be a way that that's bad. We saw them take a much more aggressive approach with Caleb Downs. We saw him a lot closer to the line of scrimmage, I felt like, during the Michigan State game after he was sort of staying back and playing a little conservatively the first couple weeks. He seemed like he was playing a lot closer to the line of scrimmage at times on Saturday against Michigan State and making plays close to the line of scrimmage against Michigan State. I think he might have only been credited with one tackle for loss, but he had another one that was a tackle for no gain. Had a big stop right before halftime. The third down play was 3rd and 11 right after the JT Tuimoloau sack, and Downs made a really nice play for either a loss of one or no gain that set up that last Ohio State touchdown drive in the first half. I think you might see this might be a week when you see Caleb Downs play close to the line of scrimmage again. Because if you're not real concerned about the deep shots from the Iowa offense, and you just want to try and, if you think Caleb Johnson is their main weapon and the main way they're going to try to attack you, I think you're going to be more aggressive with playing either Lathan Ransom or Caleb Downs, or potentially both, closer to the line of scrimmage, because that might be a big part of the defensive game plan this week.
Jim Knowles mentioned today that they activated Caleb Downs this past weekend, and it just it makes me think of like he's a sleeper cell or some sort of belongs to a hitman fraternity where it's like, oh, they've activated John Wick and here he comes, and Caleb Downs is out there just blowing stuff up. I just thought that was interesting that now that the games are real, he's going to be in more places, more than one place at once, basically, is how I would assume he'll be, because we know he'll start out 12 yards behind the line of scrimmage or into the secondary, but he gets to the line of scrimmage about the same time as the ball carrier. I'm seeing the Michigan comparisons to Iowa that are going on in the chat.
Yeah, I was starring a bunch of those for later, but we can hit them now. Tyler Shore says, "Is OSU/media downplaying this Iowa game? I really think they're almost a carbon copy of Michigan. We will learn quite a bit on Saturday." Honestly, the way you would be downplaying the Iowa game would be, we're already talking about the Oregon game.
Yeah.
And I really haven't heard, there were no questions about Oregon today during the game. There was no conversation about Oregon among the media sitting around before the press conference. There wasn't anything really after the press conference. I think everyone is recognizing that this is the most significant opponent and the best opponent that Ohio State has played so far. But it's really half of a team. The defense is maybe the best in the nation by some statistical categories, but the offense is the offense. And so the offense can, could Iowa come in and beat Ohio State on Saturday? Absolutely. Could Iowa come in and score 24 points on Ohio State? I'm not so sure. It feels like, yeah, they could beat Ohio State on Saturday, but they would need Ohio State to play really sloppy, kind of fall into their hands a little bit and score 17 points and maybe give them a touchdown on a turnover or something like that.
I just looked at the line. Do you know what it is?
I have no idea what the line is.
Yeah,
hang on, let me guess. Is it OSU minus the over-under is probably in the – let's start with the over-under because it's an Iowa game, so that's probably easier. Is the over-under 38?
No, it's 44.5. This is all based on ESPN Bet because I'm on ESPN's
44.5. Okay, 44.5. I'm going to say Ohio State's favored by between 14 and 17 points.
20.5.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so the carbon copy of Michigan, and I see somebody else saying they're Michigan light. Tom, this goes back to the first Michigan Monday of the season when you called them the rich man's Iowa. And then about a week later, we had to change our minds. It's like, no, they're kind of more the poor man's Iowa. And I think, although I did see Alex Orji has a higher QBR or passer rating than Cade McNamara right now, which is, and as I posted on the board, Tom, if you need any further proof of the impact of Connor Stallions on Michigan football, Cade McNamara took Michigan to the playoffs. Just hashtag never forget that after watching what he is now doing at Iowa and not doing at Iowa. And yes, he had better weapons, but some of these easy throws are not being made for Iowa with him. And with Iowa, as Tyler Shore says, not disrespecting them per se, but maybe just the fans seem to be treating them as Michigan State.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say maybe the odds makers are doing the same. Ohio State was a 24-point favorite against Michigan State. But I think what we've talked about and what we've talked to others about is the schedule gets increasingly more difficult, and that includes from Michigan State to Iowa. And as Chip Kelly said today, this will be the best coach defense they face all season long. And he said he loves this kind of a chess match. If you're a football guy, you have to love it. He is a football guy. And so the Ohio State coaches are taking this very seriously. And if they are taking it seriously, the Ohio State players are taking it seriously as well. And to this point, we've seen the Buckeyes take every opponent seriously, I would say. And now that you're playing the best opponent that you've faced so far, I don't expect them to overlook anything. Ohio State fans, some fans, and maybe in some media, are we dismissive of the Iowa offense? Yes, the passing offense, but we just spent 5 minutes talking about the run offense because it's very effective right now.
Right. There are certain things that Iowa is good at, and the stuff that Iowa is good at, Iowa is very good at, and they're a better offense than they were last year. They've gone from abysmal, embarrassing, worst in the nation offense to merely below average. And when you have a defense that is the best in the country or top 5 in the country in a lot of different statistical categories, below average offense can get you a whole lot of wins. They're probably going to get out talented by Ohio State on Saturday, but this is really the only game where I think before the season, when I talked to the Iowa Chad Leistico from the Des Moines Register at Big Ten Media Days, he said, really, outside of the Ohio State game, there's not one that you look at and go, that's definitely a loss for them, or almost certainly a loss for them. It's just, and there's there is a way that Iowa comes in and beats Ohio State on Saturday. That's a possibility. That's a much more realistic possibility than it was for Michigan State last Saturday. Just because Iowa, you can make an argument that Iowa has one of the best units on the field. Like Ohio State's offense was far better than Michigan State's defense. Ohio State's defense was far better than Michigan State's offense. You can make an argument that Iowa's defense is in the same tier as Ohio State's offense. So, yeah, Ohio State's going to have a significant advantage probably when Iowa's offense is on the field, but Iowa's defense is legit. And that's something that not only are the coaches saying that, the players can watch the film. The players can watch, hey, no one can do anything against this Iowa defense because it's really boring to talk about how well coached and fundamentally sound they are, but they're really well coached and fundamentally sound. It's like, do they have like incredible athletes? Yeah, they've got some. I mean, Xavier Wampa, the safety, is someone who Ohio State really wanted. They've got some good athletes, but really it's just a really well coached, fundamentally sound defense, which is extremely boring and also very effective.
You should see these guys in the layup line. They do not miss. Fundamentals, the form is fantastic. They jump off their left foot and they lay it in with their right foot, and they can do a left-hand layup off their right foot. It's just amazing.
And I think Lisa's maybe laying out, because I think I was confused where that was coming from, but maybe this is just, folks on Twitter or whatever. Lisa says the problem is the Oregon game is right after Iowa, so I wouldn't say we're disrespecting Iowa, just more excited about the showdown with Oregon next Saturday night. And that's fair. Maybe this is just mentally, I have not wrapped my head around the fact that we are flying to Oregon in 9 days. Mm-hmm. So that's maybe this is just me not having quite gotten to that point mentally yet. But to me, the Iowa game is the first one that I looked at when the schedule came out. The first one that I looked at and went, okay, that's going to be an interesting game. Everything up till now has kind of been all right. Warm up, preseason. Okay, this is okay. They got a road game out of the way. Great. That was kind of interesting because it was at least in a different place. Now this week, okay, this is a legitimately interesting and potentially challenging opponent.
And real quick, Tom, you say 9 days. It's more like 8 days because we're all going to have to get to the airport in the middle of the night, Wednesday night, like after going to interviews. I don't count getting to the airport at 2 or 3 in the morning as an entire day. So it's more like 8 days, 8.5, not even a half.
Yeah, shout out to Southwest who took the 9:30 a.m. flight that we booked and said, "Did you like the Clippy on Microsoft? Did you mean 5:30
No,
a.m.?" No,
mm-mm,
in fact,
no.
we did not. But turns out that was not merely a suggestion, but a good news. You get to fly out at 5:30 a.m. for some stupid reason. So have that to look forward to, which is nice.
Super chat there from Mike Ferguson. This is in reference to Chip Kelly. He was asked, "What do you like better about? What do you prefer about being an offensive coordinator to being a head coach?" And he said, "Well, as an offensive coordinator, you can go to the bathroom during games." And then he looked over in the corner. He's like, "Isn't that right, Coach Cooper?" Something to that effect. And John Cooper is always there on Tuesdays. But so the super chat from Mike Ferguson: How does Chip Kelly get in line and use the troughs between plays? Does he have a fast pass or something like that? And no, I think pretty much anybody who's ever been in the press box during a game has almost been run over by one of the coaches in the press box, from coordinators or what have you. Basically, if you see a coach running, just get out of the way. You can go after him, but these are not big bathrooms. There's a bigger bathroom towards the visitor section of the Ohio State press box, and sometimes maybe they sneak off there. But yeah, if out of respect, out of deference, they hold the elevators for the coaches. May as well have. You should have like a GA go and hold a toilet or something.
just you beat me to it. I was going to say they hold the elevators for the last 5 minutes of the half and the first 5 minutes of the third quarter. So yeah, that was a great line. Chip Kelly is Chip Kelly is really personable. I know that
Mhm.
he has this reputation as being kind of gruff and kind of grumpy, and that was sort of his MO, I guess, especially at UCLA, which I think might be a little bit reflective of I think he's enjoying life a lot better
Mhm.
now at Ohio State with just being responsible for running the offense and not having dealing with all the booster stuff and all the NIL stuff. That's someone else's problem. He can just kind of, this goes back to what you've talked to Big Ten coaches in the past about this, where what do you miss most about, now that you're a head coach and it's actually coaching football and doing all the hands-on stuff and not having to, focus on all the spending all your time focusing on booster meetings and coaches radio shows and all that kind of stuff. I think Chip Kelly is legitimately loving life, coaching, just running the offense. He has a lot of very talented players to work with, which is another change from UCLA. The skill, the talent level at Ohio State is a whole different thing, and it's a lot easier to look smart when you have better players than the other coach.
Yeah, the coach is the first time head coach is right now, and he's like in the recent times, and say like the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, have seen what head coaches go through, but they have no idea how much more you're doing as a head coach that has nothing to do with the on-field stuff. So much of it is off-field, and you think it's going to be great. A lot of guys get there and they realize I'm going to be happier when I'm a coordinator. I'm going to be happier when I'm a position coach. I'll go ahead. I'll sacrifice these next 5 years and make $30 million. I'll do that for the good of the family. But once I can get back to being a position coach and only making 1.3 million, I'll be much happier. But for so many coaches, they feel like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. And how many of us have, well, this is what I'm supposed to do, and it doesn't end up being what you should have done. It's just what you were caught in the moment of or the motion of. In terms of some of the stuff that Chip Kelly has said, when Will Howard said they still have some stuff that they didn't get to call in the last game, he's like, "Yeah, we got stuff. We just put it in the Tupperware and then set it aside." And I wanted to ask, is this Tupperware stored neatly in the cupboard, or is it just under the sink? Everything's just under the cupboard, just thrown in there, and you're looking for like how well matched are your lids and your
Oh,
bowls?
well, are you asking me? Because the answer is we have 37 bowls and 52 lids, and somehow none of them match. I don't
Yeah.
know how. How? Why do you people change your shape of your containers every 15 minutes? I don't understand why.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. He also said, I think it was Tim May asked what about this, like getting into the head. When do you know if you've gotten into the head of another coordinator, of a defensive coordinator? And he's like, you don't ever think about that. I never think about that. You're just thinking about the next play, getting stuff ready, getting your personnel. What are you seeing defensively? And then he said, if you're thinking that, if you're thinking about being in somebody's head, then they're in your head. And I thought that was fascinating, to where it's the tables have been turned, where now he knows that I know that he knows, that sort of thing. If you're worried about being in somebody's head, then they're already in your head and you've already lost the battle.
Yeah, I think that that's one of those things where you got to just focus on your next play, and a lot of this stuff, the time that they have to make these calls is so small. When you have this, 40-second window in between plays, 35-second window, whatever it is, between the end of the play and when the play call clock hits zero, and they have to get the play in. I mean, the radio shuts off at 15 seconds. So, okay, so that automatically narrows it down to 20, 25 seconds, something like that. You have to think about down and distance, where the ball is, what have you called, which personnel groups on the field. You have to get a different personnel group on the field. It's this very tight window of time. So, yeah, I mean, you could theoretically think about getting in someone's head between drives, but that's when you're hitting the head. So that doesn't really work either. So it's I think there's a lot of, you can think about that stuff maybe during the week, but during the game, there's just not that much time to do stuff, and there's so much stuff to think about and talk about, because when your offense is on the sideline, you're probably talking to your quarterback on the radio. You're
Mhm.
probably, you're going through the stuff on the iPads, all that kind of stuff. There just isn't a lot of time to think about that kind of stuff.
The last thing from Chip Kelly that I just wanted to mention is the first comment I threw in the chat, which is something he mentioned today when drawing up plays and scheming things. He said that he realized that 1 inch on the paper equates to 1 second of pass protection. So I'm assuming it's an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, just a regular notebook. And as you're drawing up all of these little routes and things, you don't get too cute with the routes, because well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to turn this and I'm going to go here. Basically,
Mhm.
if you have too much there, then you don't have enough pass protection. So I thought that was just interesting, something I've never heard before. Just another way to look at all of the things that are going on that we never see but never hear about. And Urban Meyer used to talk about drawing up plays on napkins wherever he is, and wherever, out to lunch and you're just out to dinner, just drawing stuff up. I think maybe if you go with smaller pieces of paper, you'll have more pass protection. You'll have more time. Is that? I don't know.
Well, it's funny that this is kind of what coaches do. They just will draw stuff up, and just this is what they do for fun. And when you talk to coaches, and it's like, so what do you guys do during these meetings? You go, oh, just talking ball. That's all. What's funny is, I drifted into my Spurrier voice there, which actually reminds me of, Spurrier when he was. I think this was especially in the NFL. When he was coaching in Washington, he would draw up these plays, and it's like, well, what's the blocking scheme? He's like, oh, you guys block them up, and it's like that doesn't work. You have to. This is all one big thing. You have to be, everything has to be, make sense together. The blocking scheme has to match what you're doing. And, hey, it would be great to have a 5-man route. Do you need to keep someone in to block? Travion Henderson saved Devin Brown's life in that game on Saturday night. Sometimes you have to keep the back end to block. Yeah, it would be great to have him drift out and just be at least a check down or something like that. Sometimes that's not an option. So yeah, doing all this stuff holistically and actually thinking through the pass pro when you're drawing up the pass routes, that's actually a pretty important part of that process.
Well, and the first thing he said today was that it takes all 11 players to pass protect. Basically, the receivers have to run the routes correctly. The timing's got to be there. Like, everything has to be precise for that 2-3 seconds, 1 second to be drawn up correctly, blocked correctly. It takes everybody doing the right thing for that play to work. So it's all involved in protecting the passer and making sure that ball gets out correctly.
Yep. So let's see. I was thinking through Jim Knowles. Jim Knowles had some good stuff today too.
There's a
Jordan
lot of
Hancock, pulling Jordan Hancock off the field. That was one that I know we've gotten questions on on the live show afterwards and all that kind of stuff. Jim Knowles makes with it is not easy, but it's a personnel decision. This is not a, hey, Jordan Hancock can't handle being a run fit or something like that. He can. And Knowles said he has stayed in the nickel at times when that was clearly the best option. but they have just many more options here. And there are going to be times when they feel like that 4-3 look and pulling Hancock off the field for a linebacker is their best option.
Yeah. And I didn't get to, I wanted to ask him, but I didn't get called on to ask him this, but how do you balance the desire to play your 4-3 and your 4-2-5, but also not letting the opposing offense dictate what you play? Because then if they can dictate what you play, they can dictate what they want to see. And if they don't want to see Jordan Hancock out there, they can go with 2 tight ends. And if it's just about matching up with the 12 personnel, and that's what you're going to do every time you see that, you're going to put 3 linebackers out there. Then, as we saw against Michigan State, they took advantage of that in the passing game for 1.5 quarters, and then really nothing else after that. But if an offense wants to see 3 linebackers out there, then that should tell you your best bet is to put 5 defensive backs out there. Now, this week, with the running game that Iowa has, I would assume they're going to stick with 4-3 as much as possible. And really, but again, your linebackers aren't tackling very well. So do you want more out there? Apparently, but the best way to get better at tackling during the season is to be out there tackling. So I expect to see a lot of 4-3 in this one. They just need to really, really tackle. And as Jim Knowles said, not just tackle, but knock Johnson back, because he said he's like the king of getting 2 extra yards when he's being tackled. So that will turn a 3rd and 4 into a 3rd and 2, which is a manageable running situation. If Ohio State wins on first down, Iowa has no shot. If Iowa is stuck with a 2nd and 10, then a 3rd and 6, they're not going to be anywhere near this game.
Right. This is a big game for the success rate. And success rate is something where on first down, you get 4 yards. On second down, you get half of what is left to get. And then on third down, you convert. If Iowa is staying on schedule and I was getting 4 yards on first down and 2 yards on second down, and it's 3rd and 2, that's where Iowa is going to be able to keep the ball away from the Ohio State offense, stay on the field, run the clock. That's what they want to do. They want this game to be 17-14. I mean, really, they would love it if it was 6-4, but 17-14 would do. That's where the Ohio State defense, this is something they talked about a couple of weeks ago, the coaching staff. Hey, you got to tackle them at 3. You can't let 3 turn into 5. That's when you make that first contact, you got to get them down to the ground. This is one of those games where that's really going to matter. I mean, it's going to matter for all the games the rest of the year. This game, it's going to matter. It's going to matter in a different way next week against Oregon. But you got to keep them. Like a team like Iowa, a team like Michigan that is not going to be able to throw the ball, that's pretty one-dimensional, you got to keep them off schedule, because that's the sorry, there's just adventures.
My eyes are here, Tom. My eyes are right here.
Yes. Sorry, there's been quite a bit of action in the top of the 5th of the Mets Brewers game. Sorry. If you can keep Iowa off schedule and get them into 2nd and 8, 3rd and 6, that is not good times for the Iowa offense. That is going to be a big problem. So that's going to be really, really important for the defense to be able to tackle. And this will be an interesting week to see how do they really feel about the linebackers. Because I know that there's a lot of consternation about the linebackers among the Ohio State fan base. And I know that the Ohio State fan base are big believers in Jordan Hancock. Does the coaching staff, it feels like, based on what we saw against Michigan State, the coaching staff feels better about the linebackers, at least in certain combinations, than maybe the fan base does.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to derail the show with the super chat?
Let's do the super chat. Yes, King Bronco says Knowles is a coward in a cheap suit. Are y'all roommates? No, Tony and I are not roommates. Sadly, otherwise we would do the show in the same place. I don't
know.
Unless we live at the Woody. No, we do not ever. We do not. And I don't know that I've ever. Have we seen Jim Knowles in a suit at any point? He'll wear a sports coat sometimes to the stadium, but I don't know that we've seen him in. Yeah, tracksuit. Yeah,
but he's more of a
Jersey suit. Yeah,
he's more of a Philly guy than a New Jersey guy, though. Let's be careful with that.
I can show you on a map where those two things are, and they're very very. He is not from Sopranos, Jersey. Like he's right across the river from South Jersey. He was actually asked, has he ever been nitpicked the way that he gets nitpicked here at Ohio State? And he said, "My dad was a Philly cop." So that was sort of a yes. But he said he didn't get nitpicked; he got nitwhacked. Was his term. I like that one a lot. He is consistently a very entertaining interview. Very very smart guy, but very very entertaining interview as well.
Yep. Right. What do we got on some of these starred questions here?
All right, so let's see. Let's run through. Jordan continues his slander. Says, "I heard Tom wished Ohio State would have hired Brian Ferentz as offensive coordinator." Yeah, that's this is one of these immovable object versus irresistible force. Except, could Brian Ferentz design an offense so terrible that not even Jeremiah Smith could score a touchdown?
Would you what kid would you wish that on? I mean,
could you, if you put Brian Ferentz in charge of this offense, what is the how many points do they score a game?
Well, and he has, and Ryan Day just stays back like he's doing with Chip right now, and he just lets Brian Ferentz do what he wants to do.
Yeah. I've known Brian a long time. I really respect his work. Yeah, you can hear the words coming out of his mouth at the press conference.
I trust my life with him. I trust this offense with him. I mean, easy high 20s. I'm thinking 27, 28 points a game, which seems outlandish and ludicrous, but the proof that he would do anything other than that, he's had some, he put up 55 points against an Ohio State defense. Maybe, although it wasn't all him, maybe if he faces an Ohio State defense every single week in practice, every single day, that would create the kind of offense where, I'm saying, Tom, 52 points a game.
Is this a Brian Ferentz offensive coordinator, Greg Schiano defensive coordinator? We're really rolling it back to 2017, or are we thinking like the Kerry Combs or Matt Barnes kind of defense? Which one?
Boy, I don't like any of these questions. I don't like this line of questioning at all. This is the kind of, I have a simulation of Iowa and Ohio State going on behind me. Maybe I can find a way to put Brian Ferentz as the OC for Ohio State, and we can run. You know what I could do, Tom?
Turn all the sliders down. Yeah.
I could also have Ohio State run the Iowa offense, and we could see how that goes. Maybe we could do that later in the week. But
all right, you didn't like that one. I think you'll like this one. Ed Rogers says, Tony for governor.
Tom, I don't want to get political, but I do have a question. When you see billionaires running for office, isn't that just an amazing thing that they are so selfless like that they would give up the ability to make money by becoming a politician? Is this not just what America's all about?
That's why they're called public servants, Tony. They serve the public. I would know, for example, if you search mayor of Cambridge, Ohio, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised whose name comes up.
I can't wait till that guy has a scandal.
Oh man. Oops, sorry, I did hit the wrong thing. Geiger Lee, we were talking about who Ohio State could least afford to lose. There was a big conversation about that in the comments. Geiger Lee says loss of Will Howard be the most impactful player loss. I think that's probably. I would be hard pressed to say that anyone else is clearly would be a bigger loss to this team. It's not that Will Howard's the best player on the team, but I think that the fact that they brought him in is reflective of the fact that there's probably a drop off there between number 1 and number 2 and number 1 and number 3. So yeah, I think an Ohio State team without Will Howard probably looks pretty different. They probably would not love to lose one of their tackles either. There's a couple other choices there too.
Well, and Kevin Noon, BuckeyeHuddle.com, does this thing every week, the Hot 11, which is the ranking the 11 best Buckeyes week to week, and you see how they fluctuate. I think Will Howard is probably the most indispensable guy, but he's number 11 this week, and I think he was 11th last week as well. And I guess, it just depends on how you want to do that ranking, because if he may not be the best, but he may be the most valuable. And now we're talking baseball again, most valuable versus best, but they certainly don't want to lose him. Josh Simmons, as you said, is another guy that you don't want to lose. But Will Howard, I think the drop off there is pretty steep. It would be interesting to see how long what that battle between Julian Sayin and Devin Brown would look like. And Julian Sayin ended up coming in third this past week, but played more snaps than Devin Brown, which is just something.
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting who is the second, what is the likelihood that the number 3 quarterback passes the number 2 quarterback on the depth chart in the middle of the season conversation? Because that's something that we talked about a bunch in terms of the Dwayne Haskins, Joe Burrow thing in 2017 after Burrow broke his hand during the preseason. And it was, he didn't have the opportunity really to pass Haskins. Haskins comes in that Michigan game, kind of helps win that Michigan game. And then Haskins sort of entered 2017 with a little bit of a leg up or 18 in the spring with a little bit of a leg up, and the rest.
Yeah.
All right. How about this one from Rusty Jesse? Do we have a 5-star problems? 2 5-star Ohio kids, and they both seem to be struggling at linebacker. Great athletes, but where is it on the field?
Well, I think both of those guys, one was a 5-star safety who graduated a year early. The other was CJ Hicks, a 5-star linebacker who never really played an inside linebacker position in high school. He started out, I think, freshman year as a corner, then moved to safety, and then was basically like a rush person. He would play linebacker, but a lot of his plays just go get the quarterback, and he would sneak up to the line and just go attack the quarterback. There was not a lot of reading, and so now he's still learning on the job, and we know things have not gone great for him. The snaps, I think he got as many snaps as Arvell Reese this past week, but that also was maybe due to the score. Sonny Styles, he was the topic of conversation today with Jim Knowles and Ryan Day, and Jim Knowles was saying the same thing in terms of he's still learning. He's first of all, he's playing 3 different linebacker positions. He's playing Sam, he's playing Will, he's playing Mike, depending on what they need. And everything he's going through right now is for the first time, essentially. And Jim Knowles talked about when Sonny Styles doesn't make a play or he misses a tackle, he thinks to himself, how many times did he get to see that in practice? And if it wasn't any or it wasn't many, then Knowles like, that's on me because we didn't get him ready. But you can't make every play. You can't practice every play. You have to kind of, as you said, revert to your defaults and things like that. But the more he plays, the more he will have gone through something. And the next time he sees it, he'll remember it, and he has that to draw on. So right now, I mean, 4 games into his career as a linebacker, basically, and playing Mike, playing Will, playing Sam, he's being asked to do a lot. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But it's still early, and there's still maybe 12 games to go, which is what we said after the immediately after the Michigan State game. Like there's still a long season. It's too early to give up on him. I think I said it a few weeks ago. Like, what is this signature defensive play? He hasn't had one yet, and at some point that needs to happen. Or where is the Sonny Styles game? I'm not asking for the JT Tuimoloau Penn State game, but where is this? 2.5, 3 tackles for loss, forced fumble, just this game where you see highlights of it and you're like, yeah, that's Sonny being Sonny, because we haven't seen that yet. And until we do, I think there are going to be questions.
I think there's going to be questions, but I think you just laid out all the reasons. This is his first year really playing linebacker. He didn't even start spring at linebacker. That move happened a few practices in the spring. So this was not even something where he started, he's had close to a full calendar year of doing this yet. So I think I'm expecting a pretty impressive learning curve as the season kind of goes along. More in-season growth than you typically see from guys who've had a little bit more time to do it. So I think that's one thing that's factoring into how I view this. The other thing is, this probably means he's more likely to be back for another season. There have been times that people have looked at him and said, "Oh, he's going to be a 3-year guy," and if he's back for a fourth season, I think you're going to get a real good 2025 season out of him. That would be, that would be something that is great news for the 2025 Buckeyes if he's back for another year. But if he's not, then that probably means that the learning curve has really kicked in this year. We'll see. I think it's way too early to write him off just because he's been so, I think he needs another year at this position. And I think there's been enough sort of, I think the idea of moving CJ Hicks closer to the line of scrimmage, that is probably not a this year thing. I think it's too soon to write him off. I think he may end up being in a different spot as well. I go back to, you remember Curtis Grant, linebacker in the early 2010s, like number 2 player in the country overall, spent 3 years really not doing much of anything, and then turned into a really good starter his fourth year. So sometimes it just, whether it's not having a path to the playing field or just not finding the right role for a guy or whatever it is, sometimes it just takes a little bit longer for a guy to get there. But there's no great, you don't win anything for writing a guy off before, being the first guy to write someone off. There are no prizes that come with that. Here's a super chat from Fort Wayne. Thoughts on tight end snaps last week? Jelani had the 4th most after being pretty even with G and Will the first 3 games.
I think and I'll just throw the snap counts out there for you. So G. Scott had 32, Will Kazmarek had 23, Jelani Thurman had 11, Bennett Christian had 12. That's from our buddy Dan Hope at 11 Warriors. And what I think that is the schedule telling the truth. As the games get more difficult, you're seeing coaches be more honest with who they trust. And they trust G. Scott, they trust Will Kazmarek the most. And then everybody else, it's not that they don't trust him, but you see who plays and who doesn't. And Thurman still got to play. I'm really impressed that Bennett Christian is getting to play as much as he is, as early as he is, and Jelani Thurman as well. I think those are significant things. Bennett Christian didn't play last year. We know. I think it was very easy to just write him off. Like, okay, well, it's never going to happen. He didn't play as a freshman, had issues as a redshirt freshman, wasn't allowed to play. Now a redshirt sophomore. There are 4 guys already ahead of him, so that guy's never going to play. And yet he has, which I think is really impressive. And, Jelani Thurman has this athleticism and potential that Ryan Day loves, and they're challenging him, and he's still playing. But I think the trust, and I think you'll see it a lot on Saturday, is with G. Scott and Will Kazmarek.
Well, and this goes back to all the stuff we talked about earlier in the show, all the boring stuff. Here's the stuff the coaches care about. You know what that tells me? The coaches think that G. Scott and Will Kazmarek are better blockers. And Bennett Christian might be a better blocker than Jelani Thurman. That might be it.
Yep.
I think Jelani Thurman very well could and might be the most dynamic playmaker in that room. They got plenty of dynamic playmakers. Can you block? Can you set the edge? Can you pull? They ask their tight ends to do a lot. And if they can't trust you to pull on a counter play and lead the way, well, then you're not going to play. It's all the stuff that we talk about every year when the freshman tight ends come in. It's like, well, when's this guy to come in? It's like, well, as soon as they feel like he's going to block and they're going to be able to trust him to block well. And can he at least pick up? No one's asking him to pancake a defensive end, but can you at least get in the way of a defensive end? Are you a willing and an enthusiastic blocker and an effective blocker? If you are, great. Then that'll work fine. And if not, well, I can't tell you for a fact that was the deciding factor in the snap counts, but I would bet it probably was a factor in the snap counts.
Yep.
Here's a couple from when we were talking about our travel. Billy Tuesday says, nobody talks about the strain that conference expansion is having on the Buckeye beat. Yes, 100%. Jordan Kapler.
We talk about it.
Yes, just to ourselves. We don't complain externally. We just we just, believe me, we have to listen to Tony and Kevin complain all the time. Not me. I'm a hero. Just work pail, lunch pail, hard hat.
My Mets are on. I can't watch my Mets.
Oh no, I'm watching. Don't worry. Jordan Kapler says now I'm expecting a random 5 a.m. live stream from the airport on. And we do have like a 6-hour layover as well, so you might get a random Mountain Time airport live stream. I don't know. We'll see. We're generally good for 2 to 3 live streams a day when we're on the road. So yeah, you'll probably get a live stream from some state that is not Ohio or Oregon at some point on that trip.
Hit the bell to be notified.
Yes, exactly. Hit the bell to be notified. Before we get to that one, we'll get to Mike Farino's super chat. Can we talk about the load management the coaches have done with Trey? People says one more carry so far, which is perfect considering the only weakness of Trey's health. Save him for when he's needed.
Yeah, it is amazing what they've done and how he's not complaining about anything. He's a selfless player, but 31 carries in 4 games, 276 yards rushing, 8.9 yards per carry, a heavy 10 carries against Western Michigan in week 2 was his most. So it's 8 carries against Akron, 10 against Western Michigan, 6 against Marshall, 7 against Michigan State. And I think he had 5 carries maybe in the first quarter of this past game and then just 2 the rest of the game. I don't know if Carlos Lachlan forgets about him sometimes. I don't think that's the case. And yet he's playing more snaps than I believe, as I scroll real quickly. Last week he played 32 snaps, Quinshon Judkins 27. And they're getting him the ball in the passing game a little bit, but he is super fresh, and I think they're just trying to keep him as healthy as possible. And not that they're coddling him, because it's not like Quinshon Judkins is having to carry the ball 25 times to compensate. It's just when you've got some big plays, when there are 25-yard runs, that's 4 or 5 yarders that they don't need to go get now.
Well, there's that, and there's also you're asking him to do other stuff. This goes back to the blocking thing I just talked about. Why is Cray Van Henderson playing all these snaps when he's not getting handed the ball and he's not getting thrown the ball? Well, they trust him to block. They trust him to pick up the blitzes. And you've seen all season why they trust him to do that. He has had some highlight reel blitz pickups. That is not an easy thing to do, to have highlight reel blitz pickups. But he had one a couple weeks ago at home. He had a pretty good one on Saturday against Michigan State. They trust him to do all the other stuff that you have to do, and sure, there are plays where he's just standing in the backfield and it's just in case and there's no one there, and that's fine. They want to keep him fresh. They want to keep Quinshon Judkins fresh. They want to keep James Peoples, relatively fresh, because those are guys who they know they're going to need all three. Someone is going to get hurt at some point. I can't remember the last time Ohio State had a football season where none of the running backs got hurt at any point. Everyone was perfectly healthy all season long. Someone's going to get hurt at some point. That's just the way football is. Some running backs going to get hurt on every team in the country. It is a very tough physical position. So you need to keep those guys as fresh as you can. And by keeping those two guys fresh, you're also giving James Peoples more reps, which means that James Peoples is more ready. If one of the other guys gets hurt, he's more ready to step in then.
Yep.
All right. So let's go back to Geiger Lee, who said your Michigan Monday segments are so well done and not biased, so informative. It's like turning to the BBC News for world news. Michigan fans should tune in to get the real story of their team.
Now I'm thinking we need to do that show with British accents. I don't know if that's culturally insensitive, or maybe if we did it in Cockney accent, maybe that would be insensitive.
There you go. If we could develop Cockney rhyming slang for Michigan football, what if we just do one episode and just don't tell anyone we're going to do it and don't explain it? Just do it in, like, maybe it's the Halloween episode and we dress like chimney sweeps. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud here.
Don't.
Glasswing Butterfly, always a great friend of the program and a tremendous judge of character, says Tony was so mean to insist on the live happening now during the Mets game. Tony,
yeah,
you are the worst.
That's my fault. I don't really think about October baseball. I'm a Cubs fan.
Fort Wayne Buckeye says that the Mets are winning when you were planning on ending the show. Will Tom require the show to continue for good luck? No, I have to do a show with Ross Fulton in about 10 minutes. So we are going to have to end this relatively soon, because you people love your, I'm going to cut a heel promo here, Tony. I'm going to do you people ready. You people love your Ross Fulton. Oh, I want more Ross Fulton. Well, this is what it takes. You don't want to see the gritty behind the scenes work that it takes to get you a Ross Fulton show.
Gonna make him smoke the whole Ross Fulton pack.
We are doing the best. Oh, hey, speaking of, if you do enjoy the Ross Fulton shows, as soon as this show's over, I'm going to post the Ross Fulton show on the Ohio State offense. Our members at BuckeyeHuddle.com have gotten a chance to watch that for quite a while. We've been talking it on board for a while, but I'll post that publicly as soon as this show is done, so you can look for that on our channel as well. I'll even post it as a premiere, so you guys can keep chatting in the live chat afterwards. And if you want to get those shows early, hey, that's another reason to become a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Mike Ferguson says, and this is really more for the follow-up, which I really laughed out loud at. Mike Ferguson says, if Tony gets elected, his first act should be to tar and feather Tom and Jordan Kapler immediately. WTF, Mike. Jordan Kapler always riding to my defense, Tony. Always. Mika wants us to do accents. Doug says his brother was a chimney sweep.
I think
Thomas Hero says Tom is Bert the chimney sweep. Tony is Mary Poppins. But that'd be Sherry Bobbins.
Sherry Bobbins.
Sherry Bobbins.
I believe that WTF was, wow, that's funny. So I think we would all agree. Did we get through all of those questions so that we can let you go, Tom? Yes. Okay. We want to thank you all for tuning in live. Short notice, no notice. We wanted to get a show for you guys talking about what we listened to, what we heard today, and what we saw today from the coaches. Before you go, if you could hit the thumbs up, we would appreciate that. Hit the bell to be notified. Of course, subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. And as Tom said, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a premium member. That is always the best way to support what we do. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.